Today we're talking about global awakening and a shift in consciousness. And one of the reasons why I want to talk about this today is because it goes hand in hand with what we were talking about last week. So last week we were looking at the purpose of a planet. We talked a bit about aliens. We talked about network minds, and we were looking at a research paper about a planet reaching homeostasis and the answer to the Fermi paradox. And the reason why I want to talk about what we're talking about today, because it really ties into what we were talking about last week. And if you didn't see last week's video, that's fine. You don't need to have to understand it. But what I want to show you today is really talking about this idea about a shift in consciousness. Now, what's interesting is that, so last week we were looking at a research paper, and we were looking at someone, discussing how, they did research and how this idea about energy consumption, where eventually a planet stops trying to expand because of it overshoots its the energy that it can produce, and so instead it turns inwards and focuses on homeostasis and creates a global civilization and starts to basically work together in harmony. Now, we saw that from the perspective of a research paper. Now I want to look at something today which is actually something more on the intuitive mystical side. Now, the reason why I want to do that is because last week we looked at a research paper. It was very academic. And very academic, very scientific, and it explained things in a certain way. Now today I want to look at something that's kind of like mystical and intuitive and see that they're talking about the same thing, but both in different ways, but they're both missing important pieces of the puzzle. And if you've been sensing like a shift in consciousness, a change, right, especially lately, as the world becomes more interconnected and we start facing interconnected problems like global pandemic, global warming, the threat of nuclear war. All this requires collective unity. And as technology develops, we're creating a framework for a network mind. And we're beginning to realize that as we become more connected. And we're also, if we have time, I want to talk about technology in the form of the internet, social media, and smartphones, and how this is actually part of our evolution. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be very, very good. So very important as well. So I want to take a look at this. And yes, this is going to be a little mystical, a little bit, but I want you to really understand. By the way, if you want to watch last week's video and you haven't seen it yet, what's it called? I believe it's called, why do aliens never visit? Or the real reason why aliens don't visit us, the Fermi paradox explained. You can watch that if you want, but you don't need to have watched it to understand this video. Another good video that would go well if you want to see it is called The Purpose of Planets. That's another video that I did that would go well if you'd like more information on this topic. So let me bring this up. So this is, global awakening. People are sensing a change. Our collective awareness is expanding. And this is on medium.com, the website. Have you been feeling it too? A change in the air, a sense that something is different and happening, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. If you have, you're not alone. People from all around the world are sensing a change, and it's no coincidence. We are collectively experiencing a global awakening. But what is a global awakening, and what does it mean for us? Let's take a look. A global awakening could be defined as a shift in consciousness of sufficient magnitude that it results in an alteration of our species' evolutionary trajectory. Now, this is something that we talk about in Hyperianism all the time. What's the goal of Hyperianism? Is to give humanity the tools to reach hyper-awareness. So why? So that we can create a new humanity and a new Earth. Because right now, the world is in a very negative trajectory, where the rich elite rule the world. There's the threat of nuclear war constantly. Humanity is extremely divided. But all this melts away once humanity reaches a new level of consciousness. Ultimately, hyper-awareness is the goal, and understands what they are, where they are, why they're here. All this will melt away because they'll begin to understand that they're part of one united system. Now, in the research paper that we looked at last week, it said that the planet will become a one united system, but see, they weren't talking about a shift in consciousness or anything like that. It was from a very academic, scientific viewpoint, where it was all about energy consumption, that it would take too much energy to sort of expand for cosmic expansion. So rather it would look inward to developing homeostasis on the planet and create a global civilization through that. It was also talking about this global civilization being a virtual global civilization in that it's connected virtually, that is through social media and technology. And that's going to be important as well, because if we have time, I want to talk a little bit about how technology plays into all this. So you can see here how there's the same conclusion that the Earth is or should be headed towards a global civilization. In the academic view, it was because of energy consumption. Now, in this intuitive view, we're talking about a shift in consciousness, shift in consciousness. So you see, two different views, but coming to the same conclusion. So, in other words, it's a time when humanity as a whole starts to become more aware and conscious. This shift is happening on an individual and collective level. Absolutely. And why is this? It's because we are an individual and the collective Earth. And as individuals evolve and become conscious and transform, the world evolves, becomes conscious and transforms, because the collective is just formed by its individuals, the individual nodes of the collective. Now, in Hyperianism, this is a network mind. So right now, a network mind is attempting to form on Earth. This is the purpose of a planet. We talk about this, that the planet is a monadic synchronization function that has monadic minds begin to synchronize and form this subnetwork mind. And this collective subnetwork mind, not made up of individual nodes of eternal monadic minds. So more and more people are sensing a change within themselves. They're feeling called to do things differently, make change in their lives, and be the change they wish to see in the world. So here's what you can do to start noticing this change. At the same time, we're seeing a shift on a global scale. There's an increase in natural disasters, political unrest, and social injustice. We're being called to wake up and take notice of the state of the world. And we're being asked to do something about it. Now, this is really important because, again, this is what I was talking about, in that humanity has a choice to make, in that it has these global issues, problems, threats, nuclear war, global pandemics, all these things, global, climate change, that they must come together to unite and work on as a collective. And there's so much more, hunger and just everything, but certain ones are just more require global cooperation, and all these things could be solved with global cooperation. But humanity must realize that it is part of this one system and begin working together to do so. And I kind of used this analogy before. It's sort of like when you realize that we are all part of one network, we don't, all this hatred and division just melts away naturally. Why? Because you don't see, you can think of Earth as being like one system, but it doesn't realize that it's one system. So when one country attacks another, say, it's like a hand that's stabbing the other hand. And it's just destroying its own body, and it ultimately will die if it attacks the entire body, and that's sort of what's happening. But it doesn't realize that it's doing it because it sees itself as an individual unit. But it's not just an individual unit; it is part of a whole. It is part of a collective. So when one achieves hyper-awareness, let's look at a different scenario. And this scenario comes from a book. I can't remember the title of it. This example, I'll have to look it up. But say, right, so now let's say hyper-awareness. Say that the hand has a hammer. And say that the hand accidentally hits the other hand. Well, what's going to happen? What happens when you accidentally hit your hand with a hammer? You want to help the other hand. You want to bandage it. You want to run it under hot water, or I don't know if that helps hitting a hand. But you want to take care of it. You want to tend to it. You want to care to its wounds because you know that it's part of you. So that's what happens. There is no active assault on one another when humanity becomes hyper-aware. And if there is like an accidental damage, you want to take care. You want to take care of the damage that has been done because you know that it is part of you. Just like when you hit your hand with a hammer, you're gonna want to take care of that hand with the other hand. So we're seeing a shift on a global scale. We're seeing all the unrest, and we're asked to do something about it. Okay, so here we're evolving from a separation consciousness to an integrated or unity consciousness, or a social memory complex. This means that we're moving from a state of individualism, where we see ourselves as separate from each other, to a state of unity when we realize that we're all connected through an invisible web of energy, love, light, or just the thing that holds reality or matter together. Now, here's the thing that I want to say. Now, you can see this is very intuitive. And I believe that probably what I've been saying has been resonating with you. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people who have noticed this change. If you are one of those who have noticed this change and felt this change, and you probably are if you clicked on this video, then this will resonate with you. Now, what I've been saying, what I've been talking about will resonate with you. Now, I just want to real quick point out, because we looked at the academic research paper that was saying a lot of the same things, but just from a different context, not from the context of consciousness or awareness, but in the context of energy consumption. And it even talked about things like humanity should move towards denuclearization, so it can form this global citizenryship or global citizenry, where global civilization, but connected through technology. But now you can see this is essentially saying the same thing, but not from an academic perspective, from an intuitive perspective. And this is all true, but just I want to real quick point out the dangers here to be careful. So for example, this individual mentions a social memory complex. I know where this term comes from. This term comes from a New Age book. And so and it's very, very interesting. But this book also talks about a lot of crazy things like Bigfoot. And I can't remember all the different things, but there's some very, very crazy things in there as well, right? So one has to remember that when one is taking the intuitive perspective, you can get a lot of things right. And this article here gets a lot of things right. But one has to be very careful and always be guided by logic and reason, so that one knows what is true and understands it logically and rationally, and doesn't come to actually, because intuition is very powerful, but it's like your dreams. It's very chaotic as well. And you may have intuitions that you're not interpreting correctly, and so you start believing in crazy, wild ideas. So you get a lot of New Agers who start believing in crazy things like, channeling their quantum consciousness to the fifth dimension, which is just like absolutely meaningless, right? So one has to be careful to make sure that in addition to intuition, one is being guided by logic and reason to know what is true and not true. That's why I kind of like the two perspectives. You have the academic research paper, and then you have this intuitive perspective. What you want to do is synthesize it and go beyond it as well. You want to be able to use the best from both to create a new thing, which is more powerful than the others. And that's what Hyperianism is all about. It's about synthesizing ideas, getting rid of the crazy parts or the incorrect parts, synthesizing them to form a true picture of reality and understood with having intuition, but guided through logic and reason, so that we can know how reality is structured. And so, so you can see as well, when we realize that we're all connected through an invisible web of energy, love, light. So one has to be very careful again, because if you're on this intuitive level and you think of, oh, well, reality is just made of love, so this just becomes very vague and nonsensical, and some could come to certain ideas like, oh, well, to change the world, we all just need to love each other. And that might sound like a good idea, right? Doesn't that sound like what I was talking about? What about hitting the hand and it getting hurt and it helping itself? Isn't that just would happen if humanity just all loved each other? Well, yes, it would. But the thing is that humanity isn't going to all love each other. There's a lot of hateful people and a lot of hateful groups out there. And you know what I'm talking about. There's very, very hateful groups out there. And just going and giving them a hug isn't going to do anything. They're still going to stab you in the back. So we need to be very clear about that. What will change existence is raising humanity's consciousness, so that humanity can begin to understand what it is. And because this idea of just like, oh, well, love is going to change the world, that's not true. Love is what we get when we change the world, when we raise humanity's consciousness, when we start constructing a new world, when humanity starts to learn where it is, what it is, and why we're here. Then love can flow freely. But it's that's the important thing. So reality, we have to understand, is mathematical. It's kind of dangerous to think about it as something like, oh, it's made of love. No, reality is a living mathematical frequency pattern that can express love or hate. Love is a unifying function and hate is a separating function. And that's the thing. Reality isn't just this system of pure love. Reality is everything. Reality is both division and separation. Reality is this mathematical process of unfoldment of unity and separation, unity and division, this ongoing cycle. And it's important not to become one-sided, where one just sees love and light constantly and doesn't realize that there's this whole other aspect of reality that needs to be accounted for. This is like in psychology, if you repress the shadow self, you have these dark parts of you. If you don't acknowledge that they're there and integrate them, if you just pretend that they don't exist, they will destroy you from the inside out. They'll cause addiction, they'll cause angry outbursts, they'll cause health problems if you just ignore and repress these dark, shadowy parts of yourself. No, you need to realize they're there, integrate them, and deal with them. Same sort of thing going on here. So I just really want to point out, right, why it's important to have a perspective of understanding reality through reason, not denying intuition. Intuition is very powerful and extremely important, but reason is what guides it. So let's continue here. So, but I want to, just with that caveat in mind. So according to this article, we're evolving from a separation consciousness to an integrated unity or unity consciousness or a social memory complex. This is in Hyperionism what we know as a network mind or a sub-network mind, because all reality is one network mind, but sub-network minds can form within it. So humanity is forming this network mind or sub-network mind. I'm just going to refer to it to network mind for ease of communication for now. So this means we're moving from a state of individualism, where we see ourselves as separate from each other, to a state of unity, where we realize that we're all connected through an invisible web of energy, or just the thing that holds reality or matter together. And you can see where, right, like in this intuitive way of looking at it, it's not very clear. Like, or the thing that holds reality together. It's very vague, and we want to be more precise. We want to understand what reality is, and we understand reality in the form of guided by the source formula, Euler's formula, which generates frequency patterns. With Fourier mathematics, we can have, the transformation of frequency patterns into space-time functions. Right? So, in other words, we can understand what reality is precisely, not just like vaguely, the thing that holds things together. But if we see what they're trying to get at, they're more or less correct, just vague. So yes, humanity is evolving towards this network mind, but it's important to remember that we are both an individual and a collective at the same time. We're all eternal monadic minds. All right. So we are all eternal monadic minds that are nodes, part of a network. That's why I prefer to call this a network mind, because that's very clear. A network is one thing, the network, but it's formed by nodes working together, right? It's sort of this gestalt. And the idea is that we are individuals, but we're also a collective. We're both at the same time. Just like you can have a network and its nodes within it. So in Hyperionism, we cultivate 3 different modes of consciousness: avatar, monadic, and absolute. The avatar mode of consciousness is your everyday consciousness that most people are familiar with. You as a body just in the world. Monadic consciousness is you as an eternal node of existence through all your lifetimes. You as this thing that is not your body, but eternal, that just connects to an avatar, that has many, many, many lifetimes, across lifetimes. And then the absolute, which one might understand as network consciousness, seeing yourself and all of us together as one, as the one network that is all experiencing itself, through each other. It's important to cultivate these 3 triadic perspectives. And these are components to hyper-awareness, some of the components to hyper-awareness. So what does it mean for us? It means that we're moving from a place of me to we, from individualism to collectivism, from competition to cooperation. So another thing that I want to talk about too is technology. Is that the way this network mind is forming is also the foundation or framework for it is being laid through technology. Very important developments. I mean, you could say that this started with things like, newspapers, and then like the telegraph and the telephone and televisions and the radio. But, right, so that all kind of interconnected reality, the world, Earth. But what really started to do it was the internet. The internet had this sort of really started off this global connection. But what came then was social media. And the reason why social media is important, because it incorporates the internet and that the Earth is connected, but now you have this personal component to it, where we are putting our virtual selves, the profiles that you make, into this network and sharing it with each other. So see, now the internet isn't just this place of disparate information. Like, you can have a lot of knowledge by looking at all the different pages on the internet. But by putting this social media, putting this personal element, and us creating these virtual selves, now it really has this connectivity. We can see what's happening with each other across the world, regardless of distance. Then what was incredibly important was the development of the smartphone. Because with the smartphone, now you have all that power with you all the time. Technology is just evolution. It's just evolution that humanity is guiding. So what a smartphone is, it's really a new organ for humans. It's a new human organ. And this human organ is what allows us to be connected. It is an extension of our evolution. And this technological organ that we all have gives us sort of this new ability of interconnection. We can suddenly know what anyone we want is doing at any time across the world. And this item has, what does it have with it? It has a microphone, it has video recording capabilities. So like the eyes and the ears, this becomes the eyes and the ears of the network mind. We can instantly see what someone else is seeing through their stories, through their uploads. We can see in real time live events that are occurring through someone's live stream. I'm talking to you right now. Information can be communicated right now from these devices. And especially information can flow extremely quickly. Not only that, but we become very empathetic. When before in a newspaper, we just read about, oh, someone was bombed. It feels very far away. You just have this one black and white picture and some article. It's like it didn't really happen. But when you see it right in front of you, maybe even it's being live streamed, of people that are just like you and me, that are going through these hardships, that are dying, that are suffering, that are starving. Well, this creates this urgency to, wow, we're all in this together. We need to do something about this. You know, it creates this, it starts to form this global unity. So it's important to understand what's going on. Don't get so caught up in the human game that you don't see what's happening. Like, ooh, it's smartphone. It's just, just Apple wants to sell products. They do. Apple just wants to sell products. The people who make the smartphones, it's not like they knew this was happening. It's not like they knew, but this is because it's a force of evolution. And so what this results in is laying the groundwork or the framework for this network mind. And I'm sure, like I said, these are like technological organs. If you've ever forgot, do that. Go, if you're someone who uses your phone a lot, leave your phone at home for a day and go out and do something. You'll feel like kind of like a part of you is missing. And, I'm not saying whether there's a lot of negative facts to this, but the reason why there's a lot of negativity to this is because people design these phones to be addicting and for the purpose of selling products. So it can have a lot of mental health be damaging with mental health. So I'm not saying that, every aspect of smartphones are great. I'm not saying that. Because of capitalism, they are designed to be addictive, and they are designed to just sell you products. So it's kind of like this. Instead of smartphones being used in such a way or designed in a certain way where they nourish you, it's more like crack, where it's this fix that feels good for a moment and keeps you coming back for more, but your health is going down, your mental health is degrading because you're just doing it again and again, and it starts to take over your life. So you see the difference. It could be used in a very nourishing and helpful way. But even though, despite the fact that it's being used by capitalist means, by capitalists for capitalist ends, to make people richer and designed in a very negative way, it is still having this effect, regardless of that, of this global unity and laying the foundation or the framework for this network mind. Because what happens is, for humanity to evolve, to reach a higher state of awareness, right? So how does humanity become self-aware? Humanity became self-aware through a variety of reasons, but ultimately through things like language, hierarchy, and interacting. So self-awareness develops primarily in a collective setting, right? It develops when one is part of a community, and when one is using language, and when one is in a community that also has hierarchy. And I'm not going to get into why. There's a lot to it. It has to do with you being given a name, which starts to set you apart from the environment, and then realizing that others can do things that you can't, that they're in a hierarchy, so it shows like a difference between you and others. And then language structures allow one to start thinking in abstract concepts, because abstract concepts you can start to abstract from, oh, I am a this. So it gives one the ability to start to become self-aware, right? So that's how one develops self-awareness. The ego forms, and one forms an analog I, which is this version of yourself that you can manipulate in like reason space or the one's thoughts. Now, when one starts to raise to a higher level of consciousness, this is development of the analog all. So what I mean by that is when you have an analog I, you have this version of yourself that you have a concept of. You can think, oh, if you think, oh, next week I'm going to go tell my boss to screw off because I'm going to quit. You can imagine that in your mind. You have this scenario of a version of you, and you can imagine what you're going to do and what you're going to say. This is a concept of you, the analog I. Is it actually you? No, but it allows you to imagine future scenarios, reflect on the past, and plan for the future, all these different things. The analog all develops when humanity realizes that we're not just individuals, but that reality is a global unity. And then they develop this concept of a global interconnected unity. Just like when you're self-aware, you develop a concept of you to be able to manipulate and understand how things work and plan for the future. Humanity will develop an analog all, allowing one to do this as well, and understanding how to operate in a collective, how to operate truly in a collective, and which will lead to different results. For example, not like the hitting one's hand example. One who does not have an analog all, that makes perfect sense. Why not? I want to attack this thing that is encroaching upon me. But when one has an analog all, meaning that it has an understanding of the entire body, that's a good example, right? So someone who is self-aware and only self-aware would be just like the hand perspective. Developing the analog all is the perspective of the entire body, which includes the hand perspective as well. So the way that the analog all develops is through these technological advancements of unity, because through all this unity that we are seeing, a sense of connectivity, a sense of a unity starts to develop. That analog all starts to develop without people realizing it. It's a slow process. When one becomes, steps into higher consciousness, it's not just like flipping a switch. I mean, some may. That does happen. Like if someone does psychedelics or something, that can occur. FYI, don't do anything dangerous or illegal. But for the most part, it's kind of a slow, gradual process, especially for the majority of humanity who may not be interested in these sorts of things or purposely trying to explore these things. So it happens gradually. And the thing is that technology is the technological advancements of like I said, like this new organ of humanity, this technological organ of humanity that extends us to give this like united sense. This is what begins to develop it. Because guess what? Even as humans are just like watching TikToks or watching YouTube videos, they are seeing how connected the world is. They're watching information from all over the place. They're seeing people's lives in different ways. They're seeing when one country does something, how it affects the other. They're seeing all these different effects very quickly in real, almost real time. If it's like live streaming or even TikTok viral videos, information travels so fast. And that's just going to happen more and more and more. And this is what starts to develop that analog all. Whereas, before, yeah, we always lived in a united world, but getting information via newspapers, a week after the thing happens or however long it is not going to really start to develop that. What really has started to develop that is this foundation of an interconnected world through the internet, through social media, that is developing that sense of unity and developing that analog all in others, where they're realizing, wow, wait, we really are part of one system. Wow, we really are connected. Wow, what I do really does affect someone else. And look, I'm seeing those people suffer and I want to help them. I want to do something about that. That's horrible. Now, I also want to, there's so much to talk about, but I also want to say real quick that the more and more people become higher conscious, you're going to see kind of the exact opposite effect in some people, where you see like a lot of conservative individuals or whatnot, where they're just trying to drag the world backwards. They don't want anything new. They don't want anything different. They don't want anything changed. They don't want people to have certain rights, and they're going to try and keep the world back. While we are trying to rise, they're going to try and drag the world back down and resist that. So that is also this sort of effect that happens as well. So continuing here, what does this mean for us? It means that we're moving from a place of me to we. But it's important to understand that it's both. So it says from individualism to collectivism, from competition to cooperation. And that is very true. We are going from me to we and from individualism and to collectivism. But we just always have to remember it's both, right? There's some new age systems that kind of think that we're all just sort of this one, like we don't have any individuality whatsoever. It's that we have both. We're both individual and collective at the same time. It's this shifting of perspectives, shifting of consciousness perspectives. That's why we have the three perspectives: the avatar, monadic, and absolute perspective. It's important to see how these all operate together in one system. So we are that connected unity as a network mind that is also composed of its nodes operating together in harmony and unity and synchronized well. So continuing, it says the paradigm shift. Similar to the hive mind of bees, the social memory complex of humanity evolves through the sharing of information and experiences. Now, so this network of mind, like I said, it does evolve through the sharing of information and experiences facilitated by, right now it's facilitated by technology, the specific technology that exists today. So it says we are each like a cell in the body of humanity, and as we awaken and remember our connection to each other, we heal and evolve the whole. And yes, this is absolutely true, and this is why I emphasize on why a shift in consciousness is necessary. So individuality is not lost, but rather expanded. We are each here to express our unique gifts and talents in service to the whole. As we come together in greater unity consciousness, we remember that we're all in this together, and we're here to help and support each other. And yes, there is very true. I just want to say one quick thing. When they say we are here to express our unique gifts and talents in service to the whole, I just want to we always must remember that we are the whole. So I don't really like this idea of because in New Age, you can get a lot of like Christianity leftovers start to eke in, like, oh, I want to be a servant of God, or I want to be of service to the whole. Now, it's just one has to be very careful, because humanity has this tendency to want to give their power away to something else. You don't want to give your power away to something else. You want to hold on to your power, but use that power to help each other. So I just one has to be very careful with words like this, servant to the whole. We have to remember that we are the whole, and we want to use our power to both help ourselves and the collective. Because when we help ourselves, we help the collective because we're part of the collective. But we don't want to do it such that we are impeding on the freedoms of others in a irrational way. We don't want to do that. So it's important to remember we are the individual and the collective, and that we are a servant to ourselves. See, there's this different way where you can be like, oh, the servant of the whole, or we are the masters of ourselves. And this is just, we don't want to get, I see so many people who give their power away, who feel like that, or maybe they have to live like an ascetic life, or like, oh, well, I shouldn't have nice things in life. I should give everything I own away, or I should abstain from drinking alcohol, or I should there's obviously bad things. You can have people that are super greedy. That's not good. You can have people that become alcoholics, and that's a dangerous thing that needs to be watched. But my point is that one has to just be very, very careful that one doesn't get stuck in that religious mindset. You don't want to sort of, a lot of people on my channel come from Christianity because of, I talk about that a lot. I was an ex-Christian. A lot of people maybe sometime move to spirituality, and it's a step up. But one always has to be guided to logic and reason. Don't give your power away. Don't be like, oh, well, I'm going to trust in the universe. That's the same thing as having faith in God. We are the universe, and we forge our own future. You see the difference? The universe will provide. I'll trust in the universe. I'll be a servant to the whole. You are the whole. You are the universe. We are the whole. We are the universe. And we will create and forge our own world and our own path and our own destiny. That's what we do. We are the masters of ourselves. And it's just important to keep that in mind. So, but this is, great. We're here to help and support each other. Absolutely. We're all in this together. Absolutely. So about the global events and changes that we're experiencing during the pandemic, and right now with the war happening in Ukraine, more and more people are getting interested in topics that provide peace instead of chaos. And again, I was talking about that earlier. They look for something that can take them away from all the negative news and events going on in the world. Topics like spirituality, meditation, psychedelic retreats, microdosing, plant medicines, and breathwork are becoming more mainstream as people look for ways to help heal themselves and connect with something deeper. Now, here is the problem. Is there anything wrong with this stuff? No. But there is something else that humanity, if you look at this stuff and only this stuff, that is not achieving hyper awareness. Okay, so this is just understanding like this sort of intuitive view of reality. In addition to some of these things, what one also has to know is important philosophical concepts, logic, reason, mathematics. Now, these are things that are difficult and things that people don't like. And look, if you enjoy my work and you want to understand the things I'm not telling you that you have to go out and study mathematics or something. Will it help you understand reality? Yes, it will. But you can still get a decent understanding of it metaphorically and with analogies. But if one true my point is, right? If we really want to change the world and we want to shift consciousness, can things like psychedelics be helpful? Yes, they're incredibly powerful tools. For any people who watch my channel, you know I have a huge respect for psychedelics. They've been very important to me, and I think that they are a huge key to helping out. But you're not going to change the world just with these sort of things: spiritually, meditation, psychedelic treats, microdosing, plant medicines, breathwork. This one has to understand reality logically and rationally as well, because you're going to get like, for example, I have had tremendous experiences on psychedelics, but because of my study of philosophy, reason, logic, mathematics, I'm able to, and psychology, right? See, we need all these things: logic, reason, mathematics, psychology. All these are also important. They should go hand in hand with the other things. This is like like the left hemispheric functions and the right hemispheric functions of the brain. Do you want to be just half-brained? No, both hemispheric functions of the brain must be integrated and work together. Just like right brain and left brain, when it comes to understanding sentences, the left part of the brain understands the structure of sentences, whereas the right functions of the brain understands the meaning of sentences. You need both. If you have structure without meaning, well, it's meaningless. If you have meaning without structure, you don't have it can't be transmitted to you. You need that structure to even have that. You can never get to the meaning if the structure isn't there. There's no information carrier to get the information. So my point is, these things, there's nothing wrong with them, but it's only one half of the, using the brain analogies of the functions. You want both to work together in tandem. So in addition to spirituality, psychedelic retreats, microdosing, whatever, you also need reason, logic, mathematics, psychology, etc., to be able to work together with these things. Because like I was saying, I've had tremendous psychedelic experiences, but I'm able to integrate them afterwards because of my knowledge of logic, reason, mathematics, psychology. If I didn't have that, I would probably come up with some, ideas like a lot of these mystics come up with just crazy, starting to channel ascended masters in the fifth quantum realm. It's just there's no basis to reality in it whatsoever, and one can start to lose their mind because they have no way of ordering and structuring this information that they're getting. They have no way of understanding it. It's like when you go to sleep and dream, you can understand it in terms of psychology and start to understand your unconscious and how it works. But you don't want to take your dreams literally. If you take your dreams literally, you're going to have some issues. So it's important to remember, right? And that's why I wanted to look at this article today, because this article is sort of one half, and then the article that we looked at last week with the academic research paper was kind of the other half. But guess what? They're both missing huge parts. So you need them to be working together to go higher and beyond. And that's what we do in Hyperianism. We synthesize. We're not just half-brained. We're not one or the other. We are both together, synthesized. And the important thing to remember about synthesis, it's not just adding ideas together. It goes higher and beyond them. Because when you have the left hemispheric functions of the brain, associated functions, they do certain things. And the right hemispheric functions of the brain, they do certain things. And when you have both, you're not just sort of adding them together. What happens is that they work together. They work together to form things that would not have been able to be done on their own. And that's what we do in Hyperianism when we synthesize, is that we take apparently disparate ideas and see how they form an interconnected system and use logic and reason to go higher and above to understand the truth about reality, what we are, where we are, why we're here. We understand that we are these evolving to a higher consciousness, but we're not like, or whatever holds reality together. We know precisely what holds reality together. We know precisely what we are. We know precisely the trajectory of the universe and how to affect change in consciousness. So the global awakening is a shift in consciousness that is happening on an individual and collective level. Absolutely. So as we move from a state of separation to unity consciousness, we are remembering our connection to each other and the planet. Yes, we are waking up to our true nature and potential, and we are called to be the change we wish to see in the world. And the idea here is that this is, you can see for the most part right, but we have to be, understand what reality is truly. So we have this, so to kind of recap, what we have is we have Earth evolving and starting to step into a higher consciousness. And through this development of technology, which are the technological evolutionary organs of humanity that give us this new sense of connectivity, humanity is starting to develop an analog all, which is a understanding that we live in a united system. And that comes with it all these different ideas that we're talking about, which will ultimately melt away, all the problems in our world. But the issue is that we need to spread this information to transform humanity's consciousness so we can all get people on the same page and in a rational, logical way as well, not just sort of, these sort of vague, intuitive ways. We must do it in a way where we understand what we truly are so that humanity doesn't start going down the wrong path, which they very easily can if they don't do so in a way that is guided by reason. And so anyway, what occurs is that humanity forms this network mind. And then eventually we will be in this integrated, united system. And there is a lot more to it. It goes beyond this as well. It goes beyond the fact where once we do start operating as a network mind and we start having this global civilization and we start developing extremely new forms of powerful technology and start being able to synchronize together, we will eventually evolve to a state where we can operate as a network mind and achieve planetary independence. And planetary independence is when we as a collective can form a basically our own sort of internal reality without being dependent on the physical world. We won't have to sort of relocalize on the physical world anymore. We won't require Earth. We will be able to do so on this mental collective level, which we have created, this new frequency domain that we have created. So if you want to know about that, there's two videos you can watch. There's a video I did recently on the Fermi paradox. So just do a search on the Fermi paradox on my channel, and another one on the purpose of planets. So check those out if you want to know more about what happens when humanity does form this network mind. And I want to remind you, hey, if you like my work, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps out a lot. And if you ever feel like you've gotten something or learned something from my work, consider supporting on Patreon. It's the best way to support my work. And you get access to our weekly secret live streams, our hidden Discord server, the Citadel, and a lot more. We're having a secret live stream right after this. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone that does support on Patreon, especially Renaissance Fairy, Trent, Cassidy, Michael, Evie, Alan, Angela, Maria, Brian, Chubby Bunny, Megan, High Expectations Counseling, Jordy, Nicole, David, and Yelisavet, and everyone else who supports as well. I need to find better places for this. And if you want to support as well, it helps out. The link is right over here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.